Hello everybody, this is Evan with Tabletop Gaming Guild coming to you today with a miniature review for What a Tanker by Two Fat Lardies. It was a historical miniature game of World War II tank combat. So as I talk about miniature reviews here in the future, I'll be using 3 levels to talk about the weight of the game. So beer and pretzel meaning a very lightweight game, midweight meaning, like the name says, a middleweight game, or rule heavy, which is a very heavy game. So this is a midweight game. So what that means is light is very easy, but it loses a lot of historical feel, and heavy is the complete opposite. It has a lot of historical feel, but it's super rule heavy. And when you get to that point, the game stops being a game and now turns into a stimulation. So this really falls into the middle ground. The reason for that is most of the game is played on this dashboard here. So as you can see, it's a really small thing. The rules are really simple to follow. It's a dice-driven game, and it's pretty simplistic once you get into it. So I'm going to take you to the table, talk to you about a turn, show you the dashboard and what everything means on that, and then we'll come back here and I'll talk to you about my final thoughts about it. So this is the dashboard that you're going to use for What a Tanker here. So we're going to go over everything that's on here so you can have an idea what you're looking at. So up here in this upper section, this would be the tank that you'd be using. You would list the type of tank, any type of name that you would want to use. So in What a Tanker, it covers actually Eastern and Western Front for European theater, and it also covers Pacific theater too. What's nice is they listen to the back of the book, 1 page each for all the major nations, and a bunch of different tanks are listed. Not every single tank that was used in each theater, but it does have a good portion of them, so you can mix and match a lot of different types of tanks for combat. It also uses a point system, so you can match up tanks so you don't end up too lopsided one side versus another. So this next section over here is the command die. So command die, as I mentioned earlier, this is a dice-driven game, and the command die is how many dice you're going to be rolling. Depending on the side that you get when you roll, that's going to tell you exactly what you can use and do on that turn. This next section over here is the armor and the strike. So what that corresponds to is you'll get a number based off of what tank you're using, and the armor corresponds to how thick the armor is and how much damage you can potentially shrug off, and strike is how powerful the gun is on the tank. So this next section over here is the attributes. So that's going to go for special abilities for the tanks, also for certain tanks' weaknesses that they have. You'll have certain tanks such as Stogs that are turretless, so it'll be mentioning in there. But then you have certain tanks too that are also fast, so it'll mention that in there. So as the tank takes damage, you'll have this section down here for damage die. So you'll start to lose command die, so you have less and less that your tank can do as it takes damage. And also certain damages will also be listed over here into the damage area, and that will be permanent losses that the tank will have. In this section over here onto the dashboard, there's 4 things there for buttoned, acquired, aimed, and loaded. So those are actually abilities and situations that happen into the game, and I'll go over most of those once we're actually into the turn to explain how those go. So now I'm going to take you down to this little setup I have and walk you through a turn quickly to kind of get an idea of how it goes. We'll go from there. Alright, so here on the tabletop we're going to be following this M4 Sherman 76mm over here next to the woods, coming up onto this road here, and near this little damaged area there seems to be a Panzer IV sitting here watching the area. So we're going to follow this and see what happens to the Sherman during this turn. So over here I already have set up a tank board. We just named the tank Betty, filled out the armor and the strike, and we rolled the command die, so we have it all set up in numeric order here for you. So the first thing is what are we going to do here? Well, as we look at the tank here, we see that it is nowhere close, as we have some woods here, to being able to see that showing. So obviously we have to figure out how we're going to move over into that area. We come back to the command die and we look exactly what we have. So with the command die, you have numbers 1 through 6, and with the numbers 1 through 6, 1 is your movement die. So we look at it, and we have to spend these die. As we spend them, they'll go away, but that gives us our abilities. So we'll take this one. It's going to give us a move. So in What a Tanker, it's pretty straightforward. If you're moving forward, you spend 1 die, you get 2d6 worth of movement. If you're going to go backwards, you get 1d6 worth of movement. So with him, we need to get up and around and take a shot at this tank. If we don't, he's going to put us in a world of hurt. So grab 2 die over here, and we roll it. Add the die together, so that's 10. So we can move 10 inches. Grab our trusty tape measure here. So turns in the game, you can get 1 free 45-degree turn as you go. If you want to move any more than that, you have to spend an additional die. So take a look, and we'll measure from the front to the tank to the front of the tank. So we're just going to get him right up onto the road, and we'll move him about 45 degrees. So we'll move up here. Well, then we only used 1 of our 2 die to get there, only 4 inches. So now we have a good line of sight there. We can draw 2. But the problem is our turret is facing the wrong way. So, as I said, we can get a 45-degree turn. Now it's facing that way. The other thing we can do too, whenever you spend a movement die, you can rotate your turret up to 60 degrees in either direction. So if we were just to the point that we couldn't get that turn in, we could always rotate our turret. Now the 45-degree turn you can do it at any point during your turn. So if I wanted to do it right at the beginning, I can do that right even into the middle. You can do that. So now we're to the point that we can actually physically see the tank. That's out ahead. Let's go back over here to our command die. So our next one here is we need to acquire the tank. So what that means is target acquire. Your gunners are into the tank and they need to be able to spend the die to actually see it. That really corresponds to the people that are inside the tank and how well they're doing. The thought is that you have a rookie tank, so the guys that are in it aren't huge combat veterans. They haven't seen a lot of action. So it's a little bit more of a harder for them to actually do things. So to target acquire, you need a number 2. So as you can see, we have a number 2 here, so we're going to spend that here. Target acquire is pretty simple. So if you can draw a line of sight to the tank, you have the potential for target acquire. As you can see, we have a very straight line right to the tank. You have to spend as many target acquire die, so as many 2s as you can, to get there. And the number that you have to hit is a base of 1. So as we said, we spent 1 die and we can target acquire. Each intervening piece of terrain, so if we had like a wall, such as like that, if I just turn it that way, an intervening piece of terrain, we would actually need 2 die, and so on and so forth. Now coming back over here, so we're going to talk about buttoned here. So what button means is instead of the tank commander being outside of the tank, he's actually inside of the tank. If he is unbuttoned and outside of the tank, it gives you a free acquire die in that turn. But it's a little more dangerous for him to be outside, but we're not going to go into a lot of all that as we're just trying to get through the basics of the turn here. So the next thing is, since we have a target acquired, let me grab my dry erase here. I can mark this off here. And Two Fat Lars has a real cool acrylic set for all these over here. I didn't opt to get all that. I just laminated my boards, and dry erase marker works good enough for me. But if you want to get the acrylic set, I would say it's probably worth the money because they do look really cool according to the website. So number 3 is going to be the next die, which is our aim button. So if you fired any kind of weapon at any point, you know you have to find your target or acquire it. Next thing is actually aiming at it. So as we come back to old Betty here, and she's facing the correct direction. She's acquired that tank. Now the gunner is going to aim at it. So we're coming here. We need a 3 to do that. So as we have a 3 here, we're going to take that 3 and we're going to spend that die. So as we spend that die here, now our tank is aimed at it. So this follows right through the steps. Every time you have to fire at a tank, you have to acquire the tank, you have to aim at it, and then you're able to shoot. So once you acquire the tank, as long as you can maintain line of sight to the tank, you never have to reacquire it. So say this turn will go into the next turn. I've already acquired that tank. As long as that tank over here doesn't dip back behind these buildings or get around this way, well, Betty here can re-aim and fire again. So, come back. We spent that 3 here, so she is now aimed at this Panzer IV that is out there. So, what is next is firing. This is the fun part where we hopefully can destroy the tank. So, in order to fire, you need a 4. So I have 2 4s here. One thing that happens is when you take a firing shot, you're going to take a look at a whole bunch of different things. So first off, we're going to spend at least a 4 there. With that spend of a 4, we're going to now measure how far out it is to the tank. Anything under 38 inches, you need a 6 or better. Over 48, you need a 7 or better. What you're going to be rolling is, again, you're going to be rolling 2 die in order to figure that out. Now, back earlier when we were aiming at the tanks with the 3s, you can spend additional 3s on the aiming to lower this number. So right now, you can see that this is definitely under the 48 inches, so we need a 6 or better. But I can increase my chances by spending more aim die to lower the number here to get it down to a 5, 4, 3. Now you can't lower it any more than a 2. 1, you can't roll lower than 2. Also, if you roll a 2 when you're firing, it's an automatic failure and bad things happen. Now, other things that can actually make this harder is intervening terrain, or if there's a small tank or anything like that as a special ability. A couple other things that are out there. So what we're going to do is we're going to fire now. So we're going to take and roll and see. Oh no, we rolled a 4. So that would have been a shot that would have gone off wild and missed. Just so we can continue on to the rules, let's say we roll a 10 here. And it continues on as an attack, and that would be a potential hit. Alright, so we're back over here now, and so we have fired, and we had just had that 10. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to now come over here and look at this strike. So strike is going to tell us how many die that we're going to use. That's why that's important. So it says 8. So as I gather up here, let's see what we got. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 die. We're going to roll that. And then we're going to assess what we got. Alright. So as you can see, I got all these different numbers. Let's pull them up. And then we're going to see. So this is where the facing of the tank that you're firing at. So as you see, I'm shooting into the side of this tank. So the sides are called flank shots. Rear is a rear shot. Front is a front shot. If you know anything about tanks, the heaviest armor is always in the front, lesser so on the sides, and the rear always has some of the least amount of armor. So you always want to try and shoot the rear or the sides of the tank. It's going to make life a little bit easier. So the number or the area that you're firing at is going to tell you exactly what happens. So shot against frontal armor, you need a 5 or 6 for hits. Side is 4, 5, 6. Rear is 3, 4, 5, 6. So we're going to take a look at our pool here. So we have got, I'm trying to find 4, 5s, and 6s. We got 3 hits right into that. So now we're going to assess exactly what happens at that point. So since we got those hits, we can take a look at it. Now one thing is, any 6s are always classified as a critical hit. So we'll cover that 6 here in a little bit. So we got 3 hits, 1 being a critical. So next would be trying to figure out if those attacks went through. We would be rolling onto the armor of the vehicle. So I didn't make up a little thing for the Panzer, but what it does have an armor of 5. So I'm just going to roll that right here real quick. And then we'll see exactly what happens here. So the saves for armor is always, no matter what, it's going to be 5s and 6s. 5s and 6s are what's going to be. So we see we have 1 5. So what we do is we take a look at how many attacks we got through. So we had the 2 plus the critical, 1 save. So what's nice is in the rule book over here, they have this real nice and easy flow chart. So we're up to this point right in here, equals number of saves. So we're going to take a look. Number of saves now. We're not into the side because number of saves do not exceed or equal to the number of hits. So we're coming over here. So number of hits exceeds number of saves, which is what the case is by 1 or 2. So we're going to look, it's going to be a damaging hit. We got to figure out if it's going to be temporary or permanent damage. So at that point, we have a damage chart that's going to go through, and we're going to start figuring out if the damage die is going to be permanent, if we're going to start losing tanks. And really, that's the key of the game here, and you're just going to keep repeating this over and over again until tanks are destroyed. If you come back over here to the chart, so anytime your number of hits exceeds the saves by 3, the target's destroyed. That's the biggest way and the fastest way. The other way, you can put a tank out of combat as they lose more and more command die. Just get to a point that the tank is just going to retire and the crew is just going to leave because it's going to be combat ineffective. Now, I still have 2 die that are over here that weren't used on this turn. We have a 4 and a 6. So as you remember, the 4 is the shoot. So at this point, this tank has shot. It needs to reload, which is a 5. I didn't have a 5 on here. So it's not able to fire again. Now, one thing it can't do is we have a 6 here. 6 is a wild die. Wild die can be used for any of the other die, 1 through 5. So we can actually take the 6 and use it as a 5 and reload. We have this die left over. We could actually fire again. So you have a lot of options into this game and a lot of things that you can do on any given turn. The biggest thing is seeing exactly what happens on any turn here. And that's by rolling the command die. It always starts with 6, and we kind of go from there, and you see what will happen. So on this one, looks like I got a lot of wild die, so I have a lot of abilities that I can try and figure out. I also have a lot of aims, so if I could get another shot lined up, I could potentially do some damage with that. So now we're going to come back to from the tabletop here. I'm going to give you some final thoughts about it, and we'll wrap this one up. All right, we're back here from the fields of France as Betty's trying to show down here with this Panzer IV. We'll see what happens here sometime in the future, but we'll talk about our final thoughts here for What a Tanker. One thing you'll discover as I review more and more of these rules, light to midweight games are definitely right into my wheelhouse, something that I like. Without going into simulations, I really like keeping the rules simple. This is ingenious to them, by them, I should say. Keeping everything what you need is right here at a third of a sheet of paper. And then if you go out onto the internet, you can find yourself a nice player aid. I found this one here on Board Game Geek. This thing has pretty much, instead of going through the entire rule set here, this is pretty much everything you need to run the game with your dashboard. The rules are fairly light. I think the few minutes there that I was talking to you about running through the rules, I explained probably about 80% of the game. It is real rules light. It is a lot of fun. I've ran this at a convention once, played this with a couple guys, and every time that I played it, it was always new players that are playing it. They picked up, in the game actually, once you pick it up, it runs itself. It's a blast. Who doesn't like to run around with tanks, firing them, exploding things? It's just a good time. Also, Too Fat Lauries has a very good way of adding command friction to the game. Just with the random elements, you're rolling the die, so you never know exactly what's going to happen, what's going to go on in your turn. So you have to think, all right, I'm going to get this lined up, but I didn't have an aim this time. I need to get that aim before that tank gets away. And you're not sure, and it adds that little element into the game that is really good. Too Fat Lauries does a really good job in a lot of their games of adding that kind of feel into it in many different ways. And I'm sure I'll be reviewing, because I have a couple of other games that they've done. I'll be reviewing them at some other time. But if I were to go for out of 5 stars, I would give this 4 out of 5 stars. It's definitely a fun game. What's really nice, too, is they don't have a miniature lines associated to it. So you can play this game at any scale that you want with whatever you have. What I had on the table that I showed you is 15 millimeter stuff from Flames of War that was reassigned to bolt action, and we use it for this. I don't change any of the ranges, anything like that. The game still works just fine, looks good, plays well, and I don't think I would ever really change the scale just because this is what I have with it. It works good. like I said, 4 out of 5 stars with this. Look forward to doing another review for you guys. If you can subscribe our channel here, anything that you can do like that would definitely help us out, and we can bring more reviews to you later. You all have a good day. Thanks.